The devastation in Maui after shocking wildfires is clear. There are still hundreds of people missing and unaccounted for. And there are thousands of people who have lost their homes and livelihoods and desperately in need of aid and shelter. So does it surprise you to know there are still tourists on Maui having a vacation just kilometers away from the search for bodies and the distribution of aid? Officials in Hawaii and residents are now on social media urging people, please cancel your vacation, stay away from the islands at this time. Joining us with a closer look at the issue is Assistant Professor of Indigenous Politics at the University of Toronto, Oahike Maile. Welcome to your morning. Good morning.
Hi, aloha. Thanks for having me.
Those wildfires in Maui are the deadliest in U.S. history, but as we pointed out, there are still tourists there and still tourists traveling there. Jason Momoa using his social media power to tell people to stay away. Why is it so important that people stay home?
So I teach a course at the University of Toronto on Indigenous politics where we historicize the effects of tourism. So the original tourists were in fact U.S. military personnel who in 1873 actually disguised themselves as tourists for a secret mission to find strategic naval locations. They uncovered Pearl Harbor. So we fast forward 150 years today, Pearl Harbor is one of the most militarized places in the Pacific. And in just the past few years, the U.S. Navy has leaked thousands of gallons of jet fuel stored at its Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. So now tourism actually conceals the deleterious effects of militarization. At present, tourism has a variety of effects and impacts. With almost 7 million travelers to Hawaii in 2021, there's significant carbon emissions involved, but also environmental degradation, not to mention high levels of water use in hotels, which already put a strain on resources. There's only 1.4 million residents in comparison, and they're encouraged even now, especially, to conserve water. But the state, meanwhile, generates significant revenue, almost $13 billion in 2022. This doesn't trickle down to most people, but instead entrenches a deep dependency for tourist dollars, like the ones you're describing now in Maui, on meager wages in a volatile extractive industry. So while we're fighting as Native Hawaiians for land and dignity, Native people in Hawaii are paid dimes on the dollar to perform our culture to tourists consuming paradise. And this is still happening today.
Let's dig into that a little bit more. According to the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, in the first quarter this year, visitors to the island spent $5.8 billion. Tourism is the single largest source of private capital for Hawaii's economy. But then the question is, as you point out, who gets those billions in spending? And does that money spent in Hawaii stay in Hawaii?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. And I think it's important to note that in 2021, more Canadians actually traveled to Hawaii than any other country outside the United States. So you're talking about private capital from Canadian citizens' hands. And this includes Japan. So 2 days ago, after the multiple wildfires began, or 2 days after the multiple wildfires began ravaging Maui, CTV Vancouver Island actually solicited Canadians for a story about how the wildfires on Maui are affecting vacation property and travel plans. You know, a lot of us found this to be absurdly insensitive, but it revealed something really important about that private capital. It's disappointing that some Canadians are more concerned about their second homes and vacations than the people who lost everything in the fire, including some their lives. So while reports indicate tourists have indeed aided in firefighting and mutual aid efforts, you know, others illustrate a different picture, like I just mentioned. Immediately after the fires were largely contained, a snorkel boat was documented off the coast of Lahaina with tourists swimming in the same waters where bodies of loved ones were still being recovered, floating on shore. You know, additional reports describe tourists attempting, even today, to access Lahaina while officials are assessing the situation of that devastation, and locals are becoming bottlenecked in highways and roads, attempting to access town to caretake their community. Private capital aside, right? Desires for disaster tourism amid the ashes of Lahaina demonstrate pretty vividly why Native Hawaiians and local communities may feel righteous resentment toward tourism.
It's a great perspective to have this morning, and we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
And mahalo for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.